about your name. 'Cause we were all Americans before the hyphens came.
Howdy, folks. This is Doc Owen. You are listening to the Doc Owen Show, coming to you live on Spreaker and as a podcast immediately upon closeout on iHeart or either one of the Doc Owen Show apps on the Apple platform as well as Android. I highly encourage you to go out and get the apps. It's the best way if you happen to miss showtime or just can't get it together to get Spreaker on your computer or your smartphone. Plus, it's a great way to share the episodes, the past episodes. I know from the increase in the number of downloads of the podcast and listen to the podcast, we've probably got 4 times as many people that listen after the fact as do to the live broadcast. So that's a good thing. And it also means that you can spread it around. So go out and download the Doc Owen Show app and encourage others to do that. First thing I'm going to do before I get into the show is apologize. I did reach out to the NBA. I discussed with them the fact that this is the second Thursday night in a row that their scheduling of the NBA Finals has stepped on my live broadcast. They were most sympathetic, but just told me to encourage to press on, and they'd see if we could work it out in future years. So we're just going to have to live with it. The finals have just kicked off. There'll be plenty of time after the broadcast to get into the real action. I always start off with a leadership quote. This week we're going to get another twofer because there were just 2 of them out there that really needed to be brought forward. The first one is from a well-known, highly regarded academic scholar by the name of Shaquille O'Neal. The Shaq made a statement about leadership. He said there are 7 days in the week, and someday isn't one of them. So as you hear somebody, they'll get to it someday, or you think about doing it someday, think about Shaq. I thought that was pretty insightful, in considering the fact that he's on the TV somewhere right now talking about the NBA game. Thought it was timely. The other is from a very well-known, I don't want to necessarily call him a politician, but he'd probably fall into that category. He was more of a statesman, which we used to have a lot of around the world, but we don't seem to anymore. So, a fellow by the name of Winston Churchill. Mr. Churchill said that success consists of going from failure to failure without loss of enthusiasm. That one to me deserves a lot of thought. I don't recall the exact number as an example, but it seems to me that history shows that Abraham Lincoln suffered any number, somewhere in the teens, of setbacks in election after election. He went through at least 1, maybe 2 bankruptcies. He just struggled and struggled and struggled, but he kept after it. And look what happened. I would submit to you that that's what we're going to be going through. That's why the show is called Doc's America Minus 21. That means we've got 21 weeks left until the November election in 2014. So that may sound like a long time, but I can assure you when it comes right down to getting the job done and finishing it off, it's not going to be, and it's going to be a bit of a fight. So one of the things that I wanted to do in kind of queuing up the thought process and the attitude for the show, I went out and picked up some clips. The first one I'd like to bring to you is from 1961. I am certain that you will recognize this. It is a 1961 recording, so it's not exactly digital quality, but I am certain that you will get the point. Listen to this, please.
President. Let the word go forth from this time and place to friend and foe alike that the torch has been passed to a new generation of Americans born in this century, tempered by war, disciplined by a hard and bitter peace, proud of our ancient heritage, and unwilling to witness or permit the slow undoing of those human rights to which this nation has always been committed. And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country.
I'm absolutely certain that all of our listeners recognize John F. Kennedy's famous phrase. That is an outreach directly to the millennials. In my study of the millennials, as well as talking to them, a majority of them still hold the opinion that government is a good thing. Government can do good, and they support that opinion. I'm not here to fly in the face of that because I grew up thinking the same thing, and as someone who tends to continue to charge at things no matter what the opposition, I still believe that government can do good. The challenge is to decide if the direction that we're going and the direction that our current government is taking and the overall feel of what's going on around you as you go through your day-to-day lives, is it better than it used to be? Are you happier? Do you feel better? Are those around you more positive? Is it an uplifting world that JFK put out there and suggested that we need to do it on our own? We need to take advantage of our liberties. We need to take advantage of our freedoms. That doesn't mean that we don't help our fellow man. That doesn't mean that we get selfish about it. Quite the contrary. But unfortunately, for whatever reason, the current state of affairs, the current federal government does not appear to be acting in our best interest. They will tell us that they are, but I'm not buying it. And I really want the millennial generation to question, and question strongly, if that's the case. If they believe that the current direction of the government is making us better off. Is it going to make them better off when they get to be my age or when they get to be older and start having children and grandchildren of their own? It's a hard question, not an easy answer, but it absolutely must be addressed. There was an election recently in Syria, and I think that there were a couple of things about it that you need to know. One of the things that I pointed out last week in talking about the primary elections here in Texas was the fact, at least in Bexar County and probably statewide, we had about 5.5 to 6% turnout. In other words, 5.5 to 6% of the public, the eligible voting public, came forward to participate in what happens to the other 95% of the people that stayed home. In Syria, as you know, what we've been told by the mainstream media and all of the things that have come out of Syria about how bad it is and how bad Assad is attacking his people, and it's all about human rights and yada yada. He won re-election, by the way, with 88.7% of the vote, and the turnout was 73% of the people. That even Syrians who had fled to other countries were lined up for blocks, and it almost caused rioting as they tried to get into the country to vote or go into their foreign embassy in the country where they're now resident to vote. And they voted 88.7% for Assad. You've got to know that they have seen what happened in Afghanistan, Iraq, Egypt, Libya, all of the places that were supposedly being rebirthed in a democratic manner, and yet a lot of the information we got from people over there in the country was that it was actually Al-Qaeda-backed rebels who were causing the disrest and trying to unseat the existing government. Now, not that those are democratic republics. They're nowhere near the United States. They certainly are dictatorships. But apparently, the people there prefer a dictator who will take care of them and protect them and look after them for a long time, as opposed to a government supported by a bunch of terrorists that are gonna come down on them pretty hard. So, I just thought we needed to know that. We need to sometimes take a rather tough look at ourselves as a country and the image that we present and the things that we do abroad. Just because they're hard to believe doesn't mean that we shouldn't listen to what they have to say. No matter what somebody's telling you from time to time, there's usually an element of truth in it. Almost always. Unless they're, spinning a yarn or telling a fiction story. The next thing, what we got to be careful of is particularly the millennials, particularly the young people, to know what your breaking point is. You got to know when enough is enough. An awful lot of your predecessors, the older folks in the country, are getting very close to that enough is enough point. And it's because we know, feel, understand, and recognize the freedoms that we grew up with. And we also know, feel, and understand and can witness the fact that a lot of those have gone away, and they continue to go away on a daily basis. And we're fighting to retain those. And with that, I'm going to play you another little clip that I'm sure you will recognize.
Our founding fathers here in this country brought about the only true revolution that has ever taken place in man's history. Every other revolution simply exchanged one set of rulers for another set of rulers. But only here did that little band of men so advance beyond their time that the world has never seen their like since, evolve the idea that you and I have within ourselves the God-given right and the ability to determine our own destiny. But freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it on to our children in the bloodstream. The only way they can inherit the freedom we have known is if we fight for it, protect it, defend it, and then hand it to them with the well-taught lessons of how they in their lifetime must do the same. And if you and I don't do this, then you and I may well spend our sunset years telling our children and our children's children what it once was like in America when men were free.
That was Mr. Ronald Reagan. That was in the early 1980s. I do not intend to spend my sunset years explaining what it used to be like. I do intend to spend my sunset years fighting for what it used to be like and trying to hand that off, trying to get young people involved to support that action. And there's a lot of them out there. I'm not saying that. There are a lot of them out there. We simply must help their voice get out into the public, the mainstream arena. That's what we can do that helps more than anything. That's why I promote Madison Rising. That's why I promote any young person that wants to come forward and get involved to establish and maintain our freedoms and talk to other young people. So I'm going to take a little break, have a sip of water. We will be right back.
Rally the youth, come on, let's go. We've been asleep for way too long. The time has come to break the chains that bind our freedom. 9 to 5, you think you've done all that's needed. Judging by your paycheck, too young think you've succeeded. There's more to life than work without meaning.
That was Madison Rising one more time. Madison Rising. Get involved with them, folks. You will like them. I've got a note that I found that I felt like deserved to be brought forward. It was published by a gentleman by the name of Ralph, in quotation marks, de Cardenas. His signature says he is Cuban by birth, American by choice, Okie by pride. In other words, he currently lives in Oklahoma. And he talks about the current administration and the disdain that is expressed. That should tell you they do not care what criticism comes their way, as their agenda is set, and they will continue whether it is constitutional or not. They don't care. It's about the agenda. The fact that it's not constitutional is the Constitution's fault. In other words, that's when they come up with the argument that it was, written by a bunch of prejudiced old white men and it didn't really make any difference and didn't apply to today's society. To me, that's laughable. But their philosophy of degrading the military, dividing, reestablishing a racial divide. If you're listening to the opening song, which is my favorite from Madison Rising, it talks about before the hyphens came. That's an effort to reestablish the racial divide, is the hyphen. To destroy the economy, the dissolution of traditional marriage, gender divide, destruction of morality, and more attack to religion and traditional values. All of that's going on. It's not going on. It's not just, it's increasing. It's been going on. But it was a little spot here or a little spot there where it could be ignored or it could be set aside or it was a neighborhood you could avoid. Folks, that's no longer the case. I mean, it's in your face no matter where you go. Some of the other articles that I'm going to go through, you will hopefully be able to connect the dots and get a better understanding of that. Everybody, no matter what age, everybody, no matter what political stripe, we've got to drop the hyphens. We've got to drop anything that divides us as Americans and get back to what makes this country great. And you'll notice I'm not putting that in the past tense. I'm not telling you that I haven't been guilty of that, but I'm starting to correct myself. I'm not going to refer to it as what made this country great, because that sounds as if I've given up, and I have not. It's about what makes this country great, and we're going to get back to those values, and we're going to see what that really brings to the front. The overall objective of this group, whatever you call them, these misguided souls that think that America doesn't deserve to be where it is and can be and continue to be the leader in the world, their overall goal is the destruction of the middle class. If you will take a look at all of the policies, procedures, and things that they're doing, that's exactly who it is directed at. And this information, this view is coming from somebody who lived through the Castro regime takeover of Cuba. And that's exactly what he did. So this is right in the playbook of what has been successful in the past, except this time it is on such a huge and grand scale, and the American public continues to go through with a 10, 15, 20% involvement of the public, and the rest of them just think that it can never happen here, that's just nonsense. Something's got to be done about that. Let's talk about a few dots. Let's talk about a few dots that are out there that are indications of what I'm saying. Recently, the Colorado Commission ruled that discrimination against Christians is okay. That's not really what they said, but what they did was they forced a Christian bakery, a bakery that did not want to bake a cake for a same-sex marriage because of their Christian beliefs. The Colorado Civil Rights Commission came out in support of the gay couple and told the bakery that if they wanted to do business there, they must bake their cake for this ceremony. There is no good argument for forcing a business person to serve a customer when the event violates their conscience. That's why it's called the free enterprise system. The free enterprise system is defined at one level on the voluntary exchange of goods or services for payment. The voluntary exchange. So, in effect, these states, Colorado and others that are supporting this mandatory demand of businesses to do business with people that they don't want to, for whatever reason, that in itself is discriminatory. So the state can discriminate on who gets to serve and who doesn't get to serve, and you know how you do your business. But as an individual within the state, you don't get to make that same decision. And it's not just going on in Colorado. It's also going on in Washington State, Oregon, New Mexico, and probably others that we're just not aware of yet. It is very, very un-American. And the most hypocritical thing about the situation in Colorado is gay marriage is illegal. The marriage itself is not condoned, and yet they're forcing these Christians to perform at a public service for two gay folks that want to get married. It's not about gay. It's not about, you know, the Glibbit movement. That's not what it's about. It's about freedom and liberty in the United States and our right, for whatever reason, to refuse to do business with someone. By the same token, everybody in the United States has a right to do business wherever they want to. They can leave. They can go elsewhere. So it defies logic, which anytime you defy logic, you really, I get frustrated. On a similar note, right here in the state of Texas, the largest city in the state, Houston, Texas, has become the latest major metropolitan area in the United States to pass a citywide anti-discrimination ordinance. And what it does is it discriminates against everybody who does not adhere to the current political correctness of supporting Glibbit attitudes. In other words, it discriminates against folks that, for whatever reason, most of the time Christian moral reasons, don't support gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, Glibbit approaches to life. So it's about normalizing behavior of something that has long been viewed as culturally abnormal. The one thing it has done, for sure, it has made Houston a place where controlling that abnormal behavior is going to become more and more difficult, because it's against the law to speak up against it. Think about that. As long as I'm in Houston, recently in other parts of Texas, they have been holding open carry rallies in various restaurants and other businesses, and it's part of a push by gun enthusiasts. Open carry of what are called long guns or rifles in the state of Texas is legal, not handguns. They would like to have handguns included in that. So a group called the Open Carry Enthusiast or whatever, I think they have a specific name. They have been promoting exercises where folks with long guns and rifles go into various businesses and sit down and have a bite to eat or whatever, and it's causing quite a stir. Well, recently, when that happened in Texas up around Dallas, somebody from the NRA came out with the statement not support National Rifle Association, came out with a statement not supporting that, and called it, what did they say, that it was weird. That Institute saying that the demonstrations were counterproductive, scary, and downright weird. Well, that caused a bit of a furor with the open carry folks because they're heavy supporters of the National Rifle Association, needless to say. The NRA quickly withdrew that statement, blamed it on a low-level staffer who was expressing their own personal opinion, and backed it up. And, they support open carry laws, et cetera, et cetera. But one of the things in the article I found out that if a gun owner, even though it's legal, can be charged with disorderly conduct if anyone around them feels threatened. So, even though it's legal to do open carry, if somebody around you feels threatened and uncomfortable, you can be charged with a misdemeanor crime. I'm going to take that back to the bullets I just gave about the Glibbit community. I'm not a very big guy. I have been in situations with members of the Glibbit community where I definitely felt threatened. I wonder if I could get them charged with a misdemeanor crime for that. You have to sometimes view things to say, wait a minute, this is this is not equal. This is not fair. You are making special circumstances for others that don't apply to me. And how do I get my special circumstances? And if you can't get your special circumstances, then that's when you know that something is amiss, something is out of balance, and you need to try to do something about it. As long as we're in Texas, I'll talk for just a minute about the border. There's an article here. It was actually on Fox News that the border agents in Texas, in particular, in the Rio Grande Valley in Texas, are really complaining about that the entire border service, the border protection, what little that we do have, is on the brink of collapse because of all the talk of amnesty. There is so much talk about amnesty and it's guaranteed to pass and yada, 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 that they literally are coming up to the border and just dropping children. They're just crossing the border and asking to be, that they're expecting Barack Obama to take care of them, and they're literally using those words. They get a handout on where to report to the mission and welcomed in. I mean, they've got like a neighborhood home welcoming kit that comes to them when they come across the border. And it's causing such a problem that the law enforcement people, the ones who are trying, can't keep up with the insurgents. One last thing, and then I'm going to take another little break, and then we're going to get into the big news of the day, which is the Bergdahl situation, and see if we can make some sense out of that, dissect it, and come up with maybe something to do about it. One last thing is about the EPA. They are now, they have announced their assertions of authority to seize control of any water which would happen to accumulate on private property. In other words, if you have a pond or wastewater that accumulates or anything like that, they can take control of that property. It's absolutely ridiculous, but they are asserting the fact that they can do that. So then the property becomes available to, the expansive desires of either agribusiness or whoever, but it takes it out, completely steps on private property rights. So we will be right back after this little rendition of Madison Rising. This is Madison Rising. I wanted you to hear some of their music. It is absolutely fabulous, inspiring, and a wonderful group. Got a 29-second limit, not imposed by them, but iHeartRadio. So I had to cut that one a little bit short. But when I pick up here in just a second, you'll be able to hear another 29 seconds, and then I'm going to encourage you to do something. So here they go again. Madison Rising. Pay attention.
Whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fights. Oh, the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets.
And the thing I said I was going to ask you to do is to go out to the MadisonRising.com website, participate with them. They are completely self-funded. They have a tour this summer that's being supported by Concerned Veterans of America, CVA. You can also find out something about them through that. But they would greatly appreciate your support. I have both of their albums. There's probably not a bad cut on it. They cover the spectrum from rock and roll to a little bit of hip hop. They've got a couple that kind of go down the rap vein and some country and western. Their tagline is music with a message. So I highly encourage you to get involved. I think it'll make you feel better, and anybody you turn onto their music will also feel better. Before we dive into the Bergdahl situation, there's one other historical cut that I wanted you to hear. And the people that are in the millennial group probably don't know anything about this. At one point in time, there was a show on television called the Red Skelton Hour. Red Skelton was a comedian, and he had all sorts of wacky-do characters that he brought out on that it was him, but he dressed up and became him and sort of presented a very different image. This is Red Skelton's, since we just heard Madison Rising doing some good old American music, I wanted Red Skelton to do the Pledge of Allegiance. And I would like for everyone to listen to this and listen to this closely.
I remember a teacher that I had. Now, I went through the 7th grade. I went to the 7th grade. And I left home when I was 10 years old because I was hungry. And I used to, this is true. I work in the summer and I go to school in the winter. But I had this one teacher. He was the principal of the Harrison School in Vincennes, Indiana. To me, this was the greatest teacher, a real sage of my time, anyhow. He had such wisdom. And we were all reciting the Pledge of Allegiance one day. And he walked over, this little old teacher. Mr. Laswell was his name. Mr. Laswell. And he says, I've been listening to you boys and girls recite the Pledge of Allegiance all semester. And it seems as though it's becoming monotonous to you. If I may I recite it and try to explain to you the meaning of each word. I, me, an individual, a committee of one, pledge, dedicate all of my worldly goods to give without self-pity, allegiance, my love and my devotion to the flag, our standard, Old Glory, a symbol of freedom. Wherever she waves, there's respect, because your loyalty has given her a dignity that shouts freedom is everybody's job. United. That means that we have all come together. States, individual communities that have united into 48 great states, 48 individual communities with pride and dignity and purpose, all divided with imaginary boundaries, yet united to a common purpose, and that's love for country. And to the republic, a state in which sovereign power is invested in representatives chosen by the people to govern. And government is the people, and it's from the people to the leaders, not from the leaders to the people, for which it stands. One nation, meaning so blessed by God, indivisible, incapable of being divided, with liberty, which is freedom, the right of power to live one's own life without threats, fear, or some sort of retaliation. And justice, the principle or qualities of dealing fairly with others. For all, which means, boys and girls, it's as much your country as it is mine. And now, boys and girls, let me hear you recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Since I was a small boy, 2 states have been added to our country, and 2 words have been added to the Pledge of Allegiance: under God. Wouldn't it be a pity if someone said that is a prayer and that would be eliminated from schools too?
I find that very uplifting and very moving. I hope you did too, and it's something that I think everybody needs to take to heart. Mr. Skelton, most comedians, whether you know it or not, are actually pretty deep thinkers. They just have a tendency to present their challenges to your viewpoint in a humorous manner so that hopefully some of it will sink in. They definitely view the world a little differently from most of us, and they throw it back in our face in a form that makes us laugh. Red definitely departed from his normal, but as you noticed when he first kicked into it, there was still a lot of laughter simply because of who he is. So they knew what the audience was expecting, something probably completely different. But I find that to be a real good representation of, and I'm reminded of it every time I get to say the Pledge of Allegiance, and I don't take it for rote. I have a tendency to think about each and every word as I go through it, so maybe that'll help you as well. Let's dive into, before we, and that was one way I also wanted to dive into the Bergdahl situation, which is now front and center. Ask yourself one question, and I think we know the answer. I'm fairly certain that no matter what appears on the surface or what comes out or has come out and continues to come out about Bo Bergdahl and the swap that was made for 5 high-value Taliban prisoners out of Guantanamo Bay. We all know the details. What have we been told and what have we observed over and over and over again with all of these various gates and scandals and news releases and situations that when they come up? We know that generally they come up when something else was bubbling up that was probably more dangerous or more damaging to the political reputation of the current administration. We know that everything that they do is all about politics. That's the only way that they know how to think. It has been demonstrated to us for almost 6 years that they have no concept of how to govern, how to manage, how to run the country in a form that makes it better for everyone. They just don't get it. I don't know. I don't know any other polite way to put it. And I probably make that statement because if I thought they did get it and were doing what they're doing on a very conscious level, then that's an altogether different situation. So let me bring to you some information about the Bergdahl situation that you may not be aware of. I'm doubting seriously it's gotten a lot of cover on the mainstream media. A friend of mine and somebody that you are familiar with, Lieutenant Colonel Oliver North, says that he knows a ransom of, he would be quite certain that a ransom, in addition to the 5 prisoners, of about $5 or $6 million was paid to free Bergdahl. He said he has absolute fact that about a year ago it was $1 million, and he thinks it's been going up steadily since then. So not only did they, I mean, there is a lot more to be found out about this situation than currently meets the eye. I'm not going to assume that you know all of the latest on the prisoner himself. The Bo Bergdahl was most likely a deserter. Everyone that served with him considered him a deserter. They even have charges, a deep investigation going on right now, and has been going on for the last year or so, about his collaboration with the enemy. Not just deserting over to the other side, but actually working with them to help bring harm to American soldiers. The American military is very upset, to say the least, over this swap that was made. So for all the furor and uproar that's being raised about that he did it without the 30-day notice to Congress, and several leading congressmen have basically come out and said, don't do that again or we'll start impeachment proceedings. So, they moved the red line. The reason they put in the 30 days back when they did was because there was rumors that it was going to go on and they wanted to have a say in it. So they passed a law and President Obama signed it, and then decided not to go by it when the situation arose because it was too much of an inconvenience for him. So Bergdahl is considered not just a deserter, but a collaborator. So you have traded 5 very talented, strategic thinking terrorist attackers of the United States and brought home one that is now a Muslim and probably a terrorist, a radical Muslim, if you will, that came to those conclusions on his own, walked off of his post, walked off of his guard, and joined the enemy to come back and attack the members of the unit that he was serving with. Even if you are a non-military person, you have got to understand the egregious nature of what he did. Then it will make it even more difficult for you to stomach, understand, or be willing to put up with what the government has done to get him back. And trying to spin the story that we don't leave a soldier behind, I'm sorry, on this particular occasion, I don't think we left a soldier behind. We lost 6 additional lives that we know of trying to find this soldier who did not want to be found. So we didn't leave him behind. He chose to leave us behind and go join the enemy. There is very much a difference. And the point I was making about, do you recall what was in the media and what we were all up in arms about before Bo Bergdahl hit the news. The Veterans Administration, another situation with the military. And I don't see any exigent reason, as the government put it, for this being an emergency situation that had to be acted on immediately. I think it was a convenient situation that could be acted on immediately. The last item I want to put out there about this is that when Bo Bergdahl's father came to the microphone at the White House, standing next to the President of the United States, the first words he said were in Arabic. I do not know Arabic, so I'm going to slaughter this, but I'm going to go ahead and slaughter it. He said, Bism Allah al-Rahman al-Rahim, which means, in the name of Allah, the most gracious and most merciful. These are the opening words of every chapter of the Quran except one, the chapter of the sword, which is the 9th. By uttering these words on the grounds of the White House, Bergdahl, the father, sanctified the White House and claimed it for Islam. There is no question but what the President of the United States knew this. It is the same as a Christian coming up and saying, in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Ghost. It's exactly the same, except it's in the name of Islam. I am dumbfounded as to why there is any discussion over what needs to be done. I am completely dumbfounded. And I would submit to you that you need to be too. You need to start looking at the big picture, connecting the dots. That's all there is to it. As you listen to our last little ditty, replace the word rock with the word doc. I'll be right back on the other side to say goodnight.
1, 2, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, rock. 5, 6, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, rock. 9, 10, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, rock. We're gonna rock around the clock tonight. Put your glad rags on. Join me home. We'll have some fun when the clock strikes 1. We're gonna rock around the clock tonight. We're gonna rock till broad daylight. We're gonna rock around the clock tonight.
This is Doc Owen. You've been listening to the Doc Owen Show. It's been a pleasure to have you. We will have a guest on next week. I know you don't dial in to listen to me preach every week, but it's been a little difficult to line somebody up in opposition to the NBA playoffs. So let's take a break and go watch some basketball. Go Spurs, go. God bless you. Thanks for joining me. Good night.